The drywall dust was still caked under my fingernails from a grueling 60-hour work week when the photo popped up on my feed. There was my sister, Brooke, clinking champagne flutes in first class with our parents. The caption hit me like a physical blow. It read, "So blessed for my supportive family. Amalfi Coast. Here we come." My jaw locked tight. Just 3 days ago, those exact same parents practically begged me for $2,000 to cover severe emergency medical bills for my father. I swallowed the thick, burning knot forming in my throat and stared at the smiling faces on the screen. My thumbs moved completely on autopilot. I logged straight into my banking portal, navigated to the recurring payments tab, and permanently deleted the auto drafts for their mortgage, their electricity, and their water. The confirmation screen flashed green. It was done. I sat in the cab of my work truck, the North Carolina heat baking the dashboard, and let the reality wash over me. For 2 solid years, I had been the silent foundation of their lives. I poured $45,000 into keeping a roof over Catherine and Trevor's heads. I wore steel-toed boots, breathed in fiberglass, and hauled lumber until my shoulders ached, all to build my remodeling business from the ground up. I lived on cheap coffee and frozen meals so my parents would not lose their home to foreclosure. Meanwhile, Brooke lived a life curated for an audience. She was a momfluencer, married to Marcus, a man who called himself a finance guru but was actually a walking sinkhole of debt. Brooke spent her days filming unboxing videos, complaining about the lighting in her leased luxury vehicle, and constantly belittling me for being rough around the edges. She mocked my calloused hands. She joked to her followers that I cared more about power tools than personal hygiene. Those same calloused hands paid for the designer luggage sitting next to her on that flight to Italy. The realization settled into my bones. Heavy and cold, I was never a daughter to them. I was a utility, a walking, talking appliance they plugged in whenever they ran out of cash. In their eyes, Brooke was the image of success, the golden child who deserved luxury simply for existing. I was the workhorse. They loved the convenience I provided, the checks I wrote, the quiet way I solved their problems. They did not love me. Understanding that truth did not break my heart. It hardened it into something unbreakable. The financial cutoff hit them exactly 4 days later, right in the middle of their Italian getaway. The frantic texts started rolling in on a Tuesday morning. Catherine sent a barrage of messages. "Your father is panicking. The bank says the mortgage bounced. Call me immediately." I slid my phone back into my pocket and picked up my nail gun. I let them sweat. By Wednesday, the tone shifted from panic to pure toxicity. Trevor texted me, accusing me of ruining their once-in-a-lifetime vacation and punishing the family for being happy. They truly believed I was the villain for simply closing my wallet. Then Brooke decided to escalate. She crossed the line from entitled to criminal. My phone buzzed with an urgent fraud alert from my commercial bank. Someone had attempted to reset the password on my primary business account. The security notification pinged the location back to a hotel wireless network in Positano. Brooke had tried to socially engineer her way into my funds, banking on the fact that our voices sounded identical, and she knew my social security number from an old tax document she found in our parents' kitchen years ago. She failed the secondary security question, locking the account entirely. The sheer audacity left me staring at the screen in disbelief. Marcus had lost his last remaining consulting gig, leaving them entirely broke. And Brooke thought she could simply dip into my business reserves to fund their lifestyle. When they finally returned to Charlotte, reality slapped them in the face. With no money and an eviction notice looming over Marcus and Brooke's leased apartment, they packed up their entire life and moved into Catherine and Trevor's house. The very house I had been paying for, the house I just stopped funding. The walls were closing in on them. And instead of apologizing, they chose war. Brooke and Marcus weaponized the local bureaucracy against me. Within a week, inspectors from the city zoning board and the occupational safety department swarmed my 3 active commercial job sites. They carried clipboards filled with dozens of anonymous, malicious complaints regarding structural hazards and safety violations that did not actually exist. The inspectors had to follow protocol. They issued temporary stop work orders across the board. My crews were sent home. My deadlines were shattered. Brooke wanted to bankrupt me. She wanted me desperate enough to crawl back and beg for peace. The silence in my house that week was deafening. My foreman called me, confused, asking why the city inspectors had red tagged the sites. I spent 3 days sitting at my kitchen table, staring at the paperwork, realizing the sheer scale of Brooke's hatred. She did not just want me to pay for her lifestyle, she wanted to destroy my ability to build my own. She wanted me poor, dependent, and broken. That realization was the catalyst for the trap. Reasoning with a parasite only invites more feeding. You have to sever the host completely. She severely miscalculated. Brooke operated on loud, chaotic drama. She thrived on screaming matches and public tears. I operated in absolute, terrifying silence. I built things for a living. I understood patience. I understood that a trap, just like a solid house, needed a foundation of concrete and iron months prior, long before the Amalfi Coast betrayal. I had purchased a dilapidated foreclosure just 2 streets over from our parents' house. I bought it in cash as a quiet investment property. I spent my weekends gutting the interior, laying fresh marble, installing custom cabinetry, and completely transforming the space. It was in the final stages of a high-end remodel. I realized this house was the perfect bait. Brooke was currently crammed into a tiny childhood bedroom with her broke husband, desperate for an escape, desperate to maintain her wealthy image. I sent her a brief text. I told her I had a new property and wanted to give her a private tour. She replied within 2 minutes. Brooke arrived the next morning wearing an oversized designer coat and carrying a gourmet coffee cup. She walked through the freshly painted hallways, her eyes wide with greedy anticipation. She practically measured the windows for custom curtains in her mind. She ran her hands over the marble kitchen island and gave me a sickeningly sweet smile. She assumed I was offering the house to her. She thought I was caving, offering a family discount so she could escape the crowded house down the street. I locked the heavy oak front door. The deadbolt clicked loudly. Echoing in the empty kitchen, I reached into my leather work bag and pulled out a thick manila folder. I slid it across the flawless marble island until it bumped against her coffee cup. She looked down, her smile faltering. "What is this?" she asked, her voice tight. I leaned against the counter. "That is a formal notice of intent to sue for fraudulent inducement." I told her, my voice perfectly level. It was drafted by my attorney, Morgan. You will find printed screenshots of Catherine and Trevor begging for medical emergency funds, sitting right next to your lovely first-class selfies. You committed federal wire fraud. I am demanding the immediate return of $45,000 for unjust enrichment. Brooke stared at the papers as if they were covered in venom. Her face drained of color, then rapidly flushed with a violent, ugly red. "You cannot do this," she hissed. "We are your family. You gave them that money. I gave them money for hospital bills." I corrected her. "You spent it on champagne. You have 30 days to respond, or Morgan files it in open court, and every brand sponsor you have left will receive a copy of the criminal complaint." Brooke exploded. She screamed that I was a bitter, jealous contractor who would never be anything more than the family cash machine. She threw the folder onto the floor, scattering the documents across the hardwood, and stormed toward the door. She fumbled with the deadbolt, yanked the door open, and screamed over her shoulder that I would pay for humiliating her. I watched her stomp down the driveway. The trap was set, and she had just taken the bait. 2 nights later, the desperation finally broke them. Marcus and Brooke decided that if they could not have my money, I would not have a business. Marcus used his fading finance connections to bribe a disgruntled former subcontractor for the electronic gate passcode to my primary commercial job site. At 2 o'clock in the morning, under the cover of heavy darkness, they slipped past the perimeter fencing. They dragged heavy, industrial bags of quick-dry concrete toward the exposed underground plumbing trenches. It was a calculated, devastating move. Ruining the foundational plumbing would cause uninsurable, catastrophic damage to my business. But they forgot who they were dealing with. They forgot I secure my investments. I had recently installed high-definition, motion-activated security cameras across every inch of the site. My phone pinged on my nightstand. E rolled over, blinking against the harsh light of the screen. The live feed showed Marcus struggling with a 50-pound bag of concrete mix, while Brooke stood lookout by the trench, shivering in a designer trench coat. I did not jump out of bed. I did not rush to the site to confront them. I stayed right under my warm blankets, dialed 911, and calmly identified myself as the property owner watching a live burglary in progress. I stayed on the line, acting as a live dispatcher, guiding the patrol cars directly to the specific access gate through the camera feed. I watched the exact moment their lives ended. The red and blue lights suddenly washed over the dirt lot, casting long, frantic shadows. Marcus dropped the bag of concrete. It hit the ground with a heavy thud, bursting open and covering his expensive loafers in gray dust. He froze, his hands trembling violently in the air as 3 officers approached with flashlights blinding him. Brooke collapsed against the dirt wall of the trench. She wept uncontrollably, screaming about her reputation, sobbing as the cold metal handcuffs snapped shut around her wrists. There was no glamorous lighting. There was no curated filter. Just the harsh reality of felony trespassing and vandalism captured in crisp, undeniable resolution. The aftermath was swift, clinical, and completely devastating. Morgan, acting with the precision of a surgeon, took the police body cam footage and the fraudulent inducement evidence straight to the city zoning board. She laid the documents on the table and proved the safety complaints were nothing more than malicious retaliation. The stop work orders were lifted within the hour. Morgan sent me a text right as I was pulling into a job site. "You are cleared to bill." It read, "I will handle the slaughter in court." Morgan did not just file a lawsuit, she filed a civil racketeering claim alongside the fraudulent inducement charges. leveraging the fact that Marcus and Brooke had colluded to cross state lines during their vacation while committing wire fraud. She attached the dispatch logs and the arrest records directly to our public civil lawsuit in North Carolina. Those records are open to the public. It took less than 48 hours for a local Charlotte news blog to find the filing. The headline read, "Local influencer arrested for vandalizing sister's construction business." The internet did the rest. Brooke's comment sections flooded with people demanding answers. Her remaining brand sponsors dropped her immediately, issuing statements distancing themselves from her actions. Marcus, already drowning in debt, had his remaining credit absolutely obliterated by the pending legal judgments. Catherine and Trevor were left standing in the wreckage. With Brooke facing legal fees she could not afford and zero income flowing from my bank account, our parents could no longer maintain the mortgage. The bank began foreclosure proceedings. They were forced to short sell the house, packing their belongings into rented boxes, moving into a cramped, low-income apartment across town. My phone filled with desperate voicemails from my mother, weeping, begging me to call off the lawyers, pleading for the family to just sit down and talk. I stood on the front porch of my newly completed investment property. The morning air was crisp, smelling of fresh pine and wet earth. I listened to my mother's voicemail all the way to the end. I felt absolutely nothing. I hit delete, blocked the number, and breathed in the quiet, absolute peace of total freedom. The judge sentenced Brooke to 3 years of probation and 400 hours of community service, citing her lack of prior convictions, but condemning her calculated malice. The court ordered restitution of $45,000. A confession of judgment was signed, meaning if Marcus missed a single restitution payment, his wages from his new job managing a fast food inventory room would be garnished at a maximum legal penalty rate of 25%. Morgan built a legal cage so tight that Brooke could not even breathe without violating a clause. The community reaction was brutal. Neighbors who once waved at my parents now turned their heads. Members of their church suddenly stopped inviting Catherine to Sunday brunches. They had traded their dignity for a free vacation, and now everyone knew exactly what they were. 6 months later, a letter arrived in my mailbox. The handwriting was unmistakable. Catherine's looping cursive. I carried it into my kitchen. Tracing the edge of the envelope, I opened it carefully. It was a 4-page manifesto of guilt trips and manipulation. She wrote that blood is thicker than water. She wrote that they did it because they wanted the family to be happy, and that I was tearing everyone apart over money. She ended it by saying she forgave me, and that her door was always open when I was ready to apologize. I read every single word. My pulse remained entirely steady. My chest felt incredibly light. I walked over to the paper shredder tucked beneath my home office desk, fed the pages into the slot, and listened to the satisfying hum of the blades turning her manipulation into confetti. I tossed the shredded remains into the recycling bin. Indifference is the heaviest weapon you can wield against a narcissist. And I was fully armed. My life looks completely different now. My business expanded, taking on massive commercial contracts across 3 counties. But more importantly, my table is full of people who actually want me there. Morgan is not just an attorney. She became the sister I never had. During the worst of the anxiety, when the stop work orders threatened to bankrupt my company, Morgan sat on my living room floor eating takeout, reviewing zoning codes until 3 in the morning. My lead foreman a man named David who had worked in construction for 30 years. Personally guarded my equipment yard at night to make sure Marcus did not try to strike again before the police took him away. My crew foremen bring their families over for weekend barbecues. This is my chosen family. People who respect my boundaries, who value my character over my wallet. The chaos of my past feels like a distant, faded nightmare. My home is quiet. It is safe. It is entirely mine. If you are listening to this, I need you to understand something fundamental about the people you share DNA with. Blood does not make you family. Mutual respect, unwavering support, and genuine love make you family. If your loyalty is only praised when you are writing a check, paying a bill, or solving a crisis, that is not love. That is a subscription fee. You are paying a monthly premium just to be tolerated by the people who were supposed to protect you. Narcissists feed on your emotional chaos. They want you to yell, to cry, to explain yourself, to write long paragraphs justifying your pain. Because as long as you are reacting, they are in control of the narrative. The moment you give them absolute silence, the moment you enforce strict, unyielding legal boundaries, they starve. They will call you cruel. They will call you selfish. They will tell everyone who will listen that you ruined the family. Let them talk. Your peace of mind is worth infinitely more than their twisted conditional approval. You are not a bad person for walking away from toxicity. You are not obligated to be the foundation for a house that refuses to shelter you. You are allowed to pack up your tools, walk out the front door, and build a beautiful, quiet life somewhere else. A life where you are the priority, not the backup plan. Have you ever kept yourself small just to keep your toxic family comfortable? Have you ever drained your own resources, your own bank accounts, and your own energy to fix someone who absolutely refused to fix themselves? What would happen if you finally stood up, stopped apologizing for your success, and handed them the final bill? I am Natalie Bennett. I am a builder. I am a survivor. And for the first time in my entire life, I am completely free. Let me know your story in the comments. Subscribe for more. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You are sitting there asking, why did Natalie wait so long? Why did she keep pouring $45,000 into a mortgage for people who treated her like a walking, talking ATM? It is easy to judge from the outside, but we need to talk about the psychology of toxic loyalty. Natalie was not stupid. She was trapped in a psychological cycle called intermittent reinforcement, better known as the slot machine effect. When you grow up as the reliable utility child in a narcissistic family, you are never given consistent love. You are given crumbs of hope. Every time there is a crisis, you step up, hoping that this time they will finally respect you. This time, they will see you as a daughter or a sister, not just a wallet. You keep pulling the lever, hoping for a genuine emotional payout. You get addicted to the potential of being loved. But when those Amalfi Coast photos shattered that illusion, Natalie did something brilliant. She stopped playing their game and started playing her own. Let's break down the street-smart financial self-defense she used to completely dismantle them. First, we have the audit strategy. When you realize you are being financially exploited, your first move is never a dramatic conversation. It is an audit. Natalie did not call them to cry or argue. She logged into her bank and permanently severed the auto drafts. Scammers, especially family ones, rely on your guilt and your predictable reactions to keep the money flowing. By cutting the financial cord in total silence, she took back her power instantly. Next, she executed what I call the strategic buyout. Instead of screaming about the past, Natalie weaponized her existing assets. She used her newly remodeled real estate investment as bait to lure in her image-obsessed sister. When Brooke walked in, practically measuring the windows for curtains, Natalie did not ask for an apology. She slid a formal notice of intent to sue across the counter. She backed up her $45,000 demand with hard printed receipts, side-by-side photos of the medical emergency texts and the first-class selfies. She did not argue about hurt feelings. She cornered them with federal wire fraud. Finally, she mastered building the case. When Marcus and Brooke desperately escalated to vandalism, Natalie did not run to the job site to play vigilante. She let her 4K motion-activated cameras gather the concrete evidence. She stayed in her warm bed, called 911, and let the authorities do the heavy lifting. By attaching the dispatch logs and police body camera footage to a public civil lawsuit, she let public records destroy Brooke's influencer brand. She built an airtight cage using the law, entirely removing her own emotions from the execution. Here is the verdict. Your peace of mind is your single most valuable asset. Do not let anyone, even someone who shares your last name, bankrupt your spirit or your bank account to fund their illusion. If you have ever had to financially cut off a toxic relative or friend, how did you execute your exit strategy? Let me know your survival tactics in the comments below. And hit subscribe for more street smart strategies to protect your peace, your boundaries, and your wallet.